So when are you going to have children? I feel like this is such an interesting topic for a now 32-year-old non-single woman to be having with you guys today. But I think this is a question that if you are a teenager, if you are in your 20s, if you're single, if you're dating, if you've been with a partner for 10 years, if you have literally not seen a penis since, 2005, you've still been asked the question as a female, as a woman, when are you going to be having kids? Do you want kids? How many kids do you want? You've gotten it in some version, in some form from your mom, both your parents, your friends, your aunt that you literally never see except for Christmas each year. Like you've literally gotten it from the entire world. And it's a question I think a lot of women really struggle with for a multitude of reasons. I'm not here to present as an expert. I'm really just here to present as someone who has my own opinion and has struggled with this topic for now 10 plus years. And I want to talk about my journey with navigating the conversation around, do I want children? Do I think I should have children? Do I think that, everyone should have children? Do I think that women should have the opportunity to maybe have a path without kids? There's a lot of different kind of elements to this topic that I think are really important to discuss. But again, I want to be very clear. I'm not coming from an expert perspective. I'm really coming from just like a human being, a female, a 32-year-old woman who has really struggled with this topic for a very long time. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it. I want to be very clear that when I was really young, I don't know if anyone's a big Gilmore Girl fan. It's actually really embarrassing, but I had friends that were here this weekend and we pulled up all of my yearbooks, and my 7th grade yearbook in particular, I must have had literally 0 friends because every other comment was like, Luke and Lorelai forever, Gilmore Girls queen, blah, blah, blah. So clearly all I was known for in middle school is that I was obsessed with this TV show, Gilmore Girls. But if you guys are familiar with Gilmore Girls, Lorelai Gilmore, the main character, she gets pregnant at 16. She has a daughter, Rory, and they're like best friends, right? And they are super close. They really highlight the friendship relationship in all the episodes, especially the earlier seasons. And they almost kind of glamorize Lorelai's journey, even though they do talk about her struggle. They kind of glamorize her pathway to being a single mom and how she did it. And she didn't need Christopher and she didn't need, a male figure. She did it all on her own. She had this beautiful house. She had this great job. She moved up in her corporate world. And then Rory turns out to be a star. So it's very funny to now look back and literally vividly remember at age 16 being obsessed with the show. I had this piece of paper that was like, if I have a daughter at 18, how old will she be? If I have a daughter at 19, and I think almost got infatuated with this idea of maybe I could be a modern day Lorelai Gilmore. And I think there was a lot of different reasons that I felt that way in my early teenage years. And I think a lot of people now knowing me and knowing how I've talked about maybe not wanting kids would be surprised at this. But I want to give you guys really the full picture of how I've navigated this topic now for my entire life. I really thought that was my pathway. And I really wanted that mostly because I didn't know if I wanted to get married. I think that this was about the time in my life where I had more awareness around my own parents' relationship. And obviously, regardless if parents stay together or divorce or, just are together but not necessarily happy, I think there's a lot of different relationships that people get exposed to when it comes to your parents. And then especially as a teenager, starting to have more awareness about maybe the gaps or opportunities within your parents' marriages. But I think at that point I was really being told by my dad, don't get married, don't have kids, forge your own path, really be independent. I've talked about that a lot on the podcast, but I really felt like maybe I was meant to be a parent, but maybe not meant to have a spouse. So when I saw this show and I was infused into the show, I was like, maybe that's my pathway. So you guys, that was 15 years ago, 15, 16, 17 years ago, where literally my vision for my life was I am going to be a hard worker, overachiever, but I'm going to give a daughter, didn't even think about the idea that I could have had a son, a daughter a wonderful life. And I could give her a friendship. I could make her feel safe and I could make her feel invincible. And maybe I could have my own version of what this TV show is basically painting as an incredible pathway. So that was actually in thinking about this topic and talking about this with you guys today when I was thinking about how I feel now about kids and what I want for my future and what I think I want for my future, because it could change. That's all I could think about is I was just going back to that memory of being in my teenage years thinking I'm going to be a young single mom, which is, again, knowing me and knowing how I navigate through life. I was a goody two shoes. I didn't, I didn't want to like date when I was younger. I never drank in high school. Like I like literally was like, I'm not doing this until I'm this year. Like I was very meticulous about big decisions in my life. But for some reason, the one thing that I was very weird about is I was like, I'm going to be a young mom. Don't know who the dad was going to be. I was just going to be a young mom. And so fast forward now, I want to be very clear that also at the time that I was navigating this, I was in a relationship that ended up being almost 7 years long. I never saw that person as my partner. So again, it was very weird to think that I'm having thoughts about, oh, I want to be a single mom, but I was dating someone. So that's also just like a fun little fact at that point. But I dated that individual until I was around 21, 22. And then I met the guy who I thought I was going to marry at 22 going into 23. And what's interesting about that is now at this point I'm out of college, I think my like vision of being like a young mom was eliminated in my brain because I'm like, oh, I'm 23, I'm old now, which again, kind of funny. And when I was with that person, he was very free. He was very, wanted to have adventures. And I think at that point I transitioned from I want to be a single mom to I want to marry this person and maybe kids will be part of that, but I'm not really sure. And in saying that out loud, what I'm actually actualizing about myself and processing this is my belief on children was based on what the other person wanted, not what I actually internally wanted for myself. Like I was like, thinking, oh, my parents told me not to have kids or, get married or have kids. So maybe like I'll just have a kid and I'll do it like my own way. And then when I was with this person, it was like, well, if he wants kids, like I'll revisit that topic. So I think a lot of our identity when we're younger is so shifted by the people we're in that I don't really think I knew at all what I wanted. And even at 32, I'm sure I don't fully know what I want, but I really didn't exactly know what I wanted. I was just being shaped by media. I was being shaped by the relationships I was in. I was being shaped by this very small-minded idea of like, maybe I could have this thing, not do I actually want to be financially, emotionally available and present and responsible for someone for pretty much the rest of my life. Because that's now as I'm 32 looking at children, I'm like, this is a lifelong commitment. I know they always say 18 years. It's not 18 years. Like I still talk to my mom today. I was over there yesterday, so it's just really interesting kind of looking at my early 20s. But I think that that's, when I look at that part of my life, I don't know if that's a very good depiction of being intentional with this decision. And to be very honest, I'm so happy that I ended up being single for a very, very long extended time, starting at 23, going on 24. I guess I was 24 at the time. From that individual, we decided no longer to be together. And I was basically single from 24 until last year. And I'm really grateful for that time because one of the things that I do want to say that I'm very honest about is I think that women, we make a lot of big lifelong decisions at a very young age. And it doesn't mean at all that they're going to be bad decisions. I think I made a lot of great decisions at 22 that I would still stand by today. I make a lot of great decisions at 24, 25 that I would still stand by today. But I do think the decision around who you're going to marry and kids, we have this idea that once it's there, we have to like grab it. It's like, oh, it's in front of us. Like, let's grab it, right? And I think that a lot of the times I'm now talking to women who are in their 30s who are like, I wish I would have waited. I wish I would have waited. And so the one thing I just want to be very transparent about is I am so grateful that I was single in my 20s, where unless obviously something were to happen that was not planned, I didn't really have the option to explore having children because I think I would have maybe explored that option. And now as a 32-year-old, I maybe would have chosen a path that maybe I wouldn't have agreed with, or I would have been regretting, or I would have not felt as confident in. And I say that with a lot of heaviness because, and I really struggle with this topic. I'm try not to get emotional about it, but I feel a lot of shame in ever saying like someone could have a child and like not be happy about it, or that, women maybe had kids younger and they're like, I wish I wouldn't have done that, because it's not to say that you don't love that child or that it's not the most amazing thing in the world or that it worked out exactly how it is. There's things that I probably look back and I'm like, I don't know why I did that, but like, man, it turned out great, right? But I have a lot of heaviness around that because I also know there's going to be women that listen to this episode who might not like my perspective. There's going to be women that listen to this episode who are struggling to have children, and they're like, how dare you even think that if you could have the opportunity to have a child and like you could look back and regret that. Like, I know there's a lot of heaviness around this topic, and I just want to be very clear that, again, this is coming from my own perspective of, I don't think that having kids or not having kids means that there's black and white, right or wrong. It means that there's options in the world, some of which are presented to us, some of us that we don't necessarily expect, that we are kind of thrown into or they happen, some of us that we choose to have that path, and some of it that we want that path desperately and it's not part of what's in front of us right now or maybe ever. And all options come with heaviness. All options come with processing. All of options come with sacrifice and heavy decisions. I want to be someone that women can just feel safe to explore what that looks like with as much of the flexibility around those options as possible. Because again, sometimes we want something we cannot have, or sometimes we want something in a certain way that maybe we have to get in a different path. And all that comes with heaviness. And I think that that's not something that we talk about enough. So that was kind of my initial thought process around children. Is it depends on what I think society paints as great. I think it depends on what my partner wants. I think it depends on if it's in front of me, maybe I grab it because, there's that age thing. You have to have kids by a certain way. That was a lot of my 20s. And here's the deal is I'm obviously not in my 20s anymore. I'm obviously in a very different place in life. I've navigated a lot of pain and loss and self-discovery in the last couple of years to now really, I think, approach this topic with more clarity and more intentionality than I would have 10 years ago. And that is not to shame anyone who has kids at a very young age. I know women who have had kids in their early 20s that are incredible parents, and I know they would have never done it differently, and they chose that, and they were intentional about it, and that's amazing. And I've also had women who that was not as intentional when they chose that path, but they, really invested in doing the right thing, and they're incredible parents, and that's great as well. So I want to be clear that I don't have a bias against anyone that chooses a different path than me. So in thinking about where I'm at 32, so here is my thought process about children. At 27, obviously being now at that point 4 years single, I was at a job that everyone glamorized, paid me a lot of money. I've talked about this so many times. At 27, I really had, I think, like the biggest identity crisis of my life, really realizing that I have free will and I have control of my own path. And I think for a long time before that, I always felt like I was almost on like a train. I was in elementary school, then you take the train to middle school, then you take the train to high school, and then you go to college, and you literally are like on this pathway, right? Like you're on the fucking yellow brick road. You're just like going down to get to this like emerald city that I don't think actually ever appears unless we create it ourselves. But we think it's there. We think that we follow this pathway and then we get to this thing and then it's amazing. And I think that the train for the first time in my life stopped at 27. I was sitting in my, house at the time, a house that I had bought at 22 years old, going on 23. And I, was sitting with more money in my bank account than ever. My friends were all like kind of trying to find it. And I was like, I kind of already got it. And I'm sitting there and I'm lonely and I'm like, what is the point? Like, what is the point of my life? What is the point of working? What is the point of family? Like, what's the point of all of it? We're in the middle of fucking COVID. I feel lonelier than ever. I hate what I'm doing. I feel almost like chained to my desk every day because if I don't perform, like I'm a failure and I let everyone down and I'm just like on this cycle. And I think that was my first opportunity, or at least that first opportunity I took to say, what if like I could dictate my path? And I want to be very clear that since that moment of having that, a month later, I bought a brand new house, the house I'm literally sitting in today. That was probably out of my budget, but I fucking bought it anyway. Bought a new house. I quit that job. I took a 70% pay cut to do that. I literally like completely demolished most of the financial success I had because I poured a lot of money into a home. I renovated the home. I decreased my income. I, was navigating doubling my expenses with a decrease. Like there was so much clusterfuck at 27. I'm single. All my friends are starting to develop relationships, or at least most of them had, kind of finding their pathway. And here I was thinking I had just shot up. Like I almost took like the expedited fucking train. I was like right there. And then my train stopped and everyone else was keep going and they passed me. And I think I had to navigate that for about 2 or so years. And it wasn't really until I think I quit my job and I became a full-time entrepreneur, which has now been almost 3 years, which is crazy. I don't think it was really until then where I was like, wait a second, the train is not the only pathway to happiness. Like I don't have to take the train. I could have walked. I could have taken another path. I could have cut through. Like, I think that was like the first aha moment where I'm like, I don't have to be on the same train as everyone else. Like, what if I could actually not have the 9 to 5? What if I could maybe like travel more? What if I could do that? And I don't know why it took me that fucking long. The time was literally 30 years old where I was like, that's not the only pathway to happiness. And by the way, I don't think I actually know what happiness is. I don't really think I know like, oh my gosh, this gets you happiness. Like I've made a lot of money. I have success. I have great friends. Like I'm, with someone that I really care about. Like there's been all these things, but I'm like, I don't know if that makes you happy or like fully happy. I think you have to choose happiness, but I think the things that you put in front of your life and the decisions you make finding happiness like easier, or like you have clarity around what happiness is, or you feel in charge of your own happiness. I don't really know how I feel about happiness. I don't know if it's like a thing you can really have or find or more just choose, but I feel that, in this pathway of getting to where I wanted, that I really was like, wait, maybe there's a different way. And so obviously at the time, single, continued to be single. And it was about maybe a year and a half ago where I was a year and a half into entrepreneurship full time. I was starting to kind of find my way, because here's the thing about being an entrepreneur. The first year, you have no idea what you're doing. People who've been in the business for a while, they're like, no, my first year was a lot of just grit and hustle. Yeah, grit and hustle to distract you from the fact you have no idea what the fuck you're doing. So that was my year one. Part of that year, I was coming out of a full-time job. I was just kind of figuring out my shit. My parents didn't even know that I was doing this. My friends were all like, in these different places. Like there was just so much going on, right? And I think at that point, I'm really starting to see like my friends are now settling down. They're kind of like finding their roots. And I was actually kind of pulling my roots up. Like I was almost like pulling myself out of being rooted. Like I had bought the house, I had done this. I'm like, what if I could just like kind of move around? Like what if I could kind of figure out what that means? Not like actually move, but like just not feel so tied down to anything. What if I could just live and figure myself out and be, I think, a little bit more just aware of like who I am and what I want. And like, what if I chose every day to change up what I want to do? What if I like pivoted my business more? Like I just kind of felt free. And I think it was around that time when I also started to think like, do I want freedom forever? Is this something that I just need to experience? They always like joke about, young women, like, young women, which is so sexist now that I say it out loud, but like you have to have those like slutty years, or you have those years where you like date around or whatever you want to call it. Like it's a very common thing we see in media. And although I think there's a lot of things wrong with that, I do think as individuals, women, men, doesn't matter, there are phases that I think we want to experience, right? Like the living the city phase, or the dating phase, or the like, traveling phase. Like we do have those phases. We have seasons, we have those things. And I started to really think like, is this a season? Am I just, wanting to experience this? Or is this me? Maybe I finally, because I'm not putting myself on this train, on this path, what if I'm just living? And now that I'm living, I feel like I can be in control. Maybe I'm just actually finding control. Maybe I'm finding the happiness. I'm choosing the happiness. And at that point, I really made a decision like, I don't know if I want to get married, and I don't know if I want to have kids. Because I don't know if I want to pick a life partner. I don't know if I want to be financially, emotionally, whether I can afford to or not. I think that's a weird conversation. I get a lot of messages of like, well, I knew you could give a good kid a good life, so like, don't you want kids? I'm like, I could also probably go buy like 3 more houses. It doesn't mean that I want to pay the mortgage on them. Like, there's so many things that you could afford to do. It doesn't mean that you should do them. And so I'm starting to kind of navigate that. Like, my financial health felt really great. My like freedom felt really good. I'm in a great house. I live in a good neighborhood with a great school district. Like there's all these things that were happening. And I went through this period where I started to just like actually like myself. And that's a really hard thing to say on this conversation about having kids, because I don't want to correlate like anything about like if I, didn't like myself, or like people that have kids don't like themselves, or any of that like craziness. I think that was really the first time where I'm like, you know what? If I lived my life alone, I would be okay. I don't necessarily think I want to. I think I'm in this phase of like, I don't need anyone, but like maybe that would be okay. And so then I'm navigating that. And then a couple months later, this guy came into my life, and here we are now talking about like, what does that look like together? Like, is this something we are going to do together? What does that mean? What do you want? What do you not want? And to be very transparent, when we started dating last year, I very much told him, I want to be very clear that it's going to take a long time for me to be comfortable pairing myself with someone, getting married, partnership, whatever. And I really don't think that I want children. And I remember like saying that with like not even any hesitation or fear, because at that point, and I've talked to a couple of my friends about this that feel the same, I felt like if I said that maybe I wanted kids, it almost was like a door opening of like, look, the door's open, and I'd rather actually just have the door shut where no one can even see into the door and like have the potential of that than me shut it on someone at some point in my life. Like that's how I felt. So for me saying like I didn't want kids, it almost like allowed them to be like, okay, like I then can choose. I'm good with the door always being shut, versus me later changing my mind. And that's kind of how I navigated that. I felt like I had this like clarity and this freedom, and I finally just felt like I was in control. That the idea of kids, I'm like, I don't think that I want that. I don't think that I need that. I don't think that's something I like have to do. And then that's kind of the decision that I had made last year. And obviously now, like, we're a year and a half in this relationship, and it's been very interesting now, almost feeling even more confident in that decision, because I feel like I found someone who accepted that like the train's not the only path. And when we've had conversations of what does life look like, for me, it's not even that I'm not on a path or I'm like not choosing to do what everyone else does. It's that I'm not going to choose to get to a destination just because it's in front of me right now. It's kind of like any opportunity in life. Like you're like, it's right in front of you. It might never come back. I feel like I had to say, if it doesn't come back, I will accept that, or I will find another pathway to get something close or something similar, and I will be good with that. And what I mean by that really is, as a woman, we are always told that we have this timeline. And it's been very difficult because like I don't like that narrative. I really think it's stupid. I get it. It's just reality of life. But also like in life, we're also told we have a timeline. We're told that we have until our 80s or 90s and then we're gone. But yet there's people who die as kids. There's people who die in their 30s. Like life is never guaranteed. And so like, yes, you should live your life to the fullest for sure. But also like you can't sit around and say like, well, if I don't do this, I only have 3 years left to live. I mean, like, I think you can go both ways, right? And for me, when I was thinking about children, I'm like, do I want to choose a path just because it's right in front of me? Or do I want to choose a path because I'm like, God, this is exactly what I want. And because I couldn't make that decision, and I even felt really uncomfortable with the idea of choosing that path, I kind of had to make the decision and say, I'm going to live my life knowing that if that doesn't come back, I will find another way to make it happen. Or there's other options that give me the idea that I can maybe almost predictably get that opportunity back. Freezing my eggs. I have not chosen that path right now. That's not something that I feel any need or desire to do, but that's a path that obviously I have a lot of privilege in saying this isn't even an option that I could choose if I want to maybe give me the opportunity to bring that opportunity back. Or maybe in the future, something I've always thought about doing is maybe fostering. The thing that I think women should hear more is like, people need great parents, but I don't think that means that they have to be your blood in order for you to be a great parent to them. You guys know I talk a lot about my friends' children. My friends are very important to me. And one of the greatest days of my life was obviously the day that Nora was born. My best friend Lauren had her daughter Nora a little over 2 years ago. I actually take that back. The best day was watching Lauren like hold her like the next day and just being like, God, this little girl, like I love her, right? And Lauren obviously has 2 kids. I love both of her kids very much. But like Nora was kind of like almost like my first grandchild, right? She's like the firstborn, of all my friends' kids that I like got to witness and be there. And, there's always special treatment for the first grandchild. So that's kind of how I like equate it. But the reason I bring that up is like Nora has an amazing mom. She doesn't need me to be her parent, but like, could I be the most amazing auntie to her? Does that diminish my value as a woman because I didn't physically give birth to her? No, in my opinion, it doesn't. Now, again, other women might see that differently, and that's okay. I don't need anyone to agree with me. I just want other women to know that like there's someone out here who sees your value. If you are being told right now that your pathway of not having kids, like if that's not on the docket for you, if that's not on your path, like I see value in you. If you're someone who says, I don't want to actually physically have my own kids, the amount of children who need adoptive parents, it's immense. It's almost horrifying to think how many kids are sitting, in a home right now saying, I wish someone wanted me. And I want women to know that women that choose that path, there's value there. There's love and joy there. And women who want to foster, like that's something I've always thought about. I'm like, maybe my value is not in the fact that I have the parts that God made me in this way to be able to have children. Like maybe that's not my value. Maybe my value can be, supporting children. I'm on the board of a children's hospital, for God's sake. Like I donated last year 6 figures to support children's hospitals here in St. Louis. Like, is that my value? Like I really think as women, the media and just the way that we have been portrayed, it's like you have this gift of, this part and this part and this part. You can have a baby. If you don't use it, shame on you. If it doesn't work, something wrong with you. And if you do use it, you're criticized the rest of your life horrible mom groups, with the fact that like after what happened after isn't the thing that they would have chosen for themselves. And these three paths, I just don't think are the only three answers. I think as women, we are so fucking valuable. Our value and just I think the way that we're built and the way that we're constructed to be loving, to be caring, to be nurturing doesn't have to be for a child that we conceived and brought into this world. I think it can be in so many different ways. And the reason I want to talk about this so badly today is because the question of like, you know, when are you going to have kids? I think for me in the last year has really shifted to like, what kids are out in the world that need love and what can I do to help them? And for me, that feels really good. Now, I might change my mind. I might eventually want children. Maybe I can't even have kids. I actually don't have the answer to that. But right now, instead of thinking like, I have to present something of like, I'm bringing kids into this world, I'm having kids, I'm doing that, I'm thinking like, there are kids out here, what can I do for them? So that really inspired me being on the board of a children's hospital. It's now been 5 years. I've donated quite a lot of money to that, donated my time, my energy. I campaign for these organizations. I'm trying to be the best auntie possible. I am donating to children's groups during the holidays to support children getting gifts for the holidays. Like, I think there's so many opportunities that doesn't just lie into this one pathway of like, you have to be a mom or you have to have your own children. And I just want other women to know that if you're navigating that, I feel for you. I have so much love for you because I know that sometimes that doesn't feel like the right thing. It's almost like that's bad or you're doing something wrong or you're not doing the right thing or you're not good enough. I don't see it that way. Doesn't mean that people in your life will. I know I'm just one voice in the sea of many. But I do at least want to open the conversation for women who maybe feel scared or unseen or unclear to know that like your value is not linear. And when you start living in a way, whether it's with kids or whether you get married or whether you live close to your family or take care of them when they're old or go to college or whatever it is, like there's not a linear path. People have created their own paths every single day. And although that's hard and although it's scary, that sometimes is also the most rewarding. And I just want to give you guys permission to maybe look away from your partner right now, obviously in a way that feels good for you, the media, Gilmore Girls, if you're me and you're 16 and you're looking down that pathway, because man, I just do not think that would have been a good route for me. Whatever it is, right? Like I want you to look away from that pathway and just decide in yourself, like, is this something that I want because I want it? Or is it something that I think I need to want because someone else has made me feel like this is the only way to go? And I hope that this is just a healthy and respectful conversation for all women in different journeys, whether you agree with me, whether you feel seen by me, whether, I misstepped in some of the things I've said and offended you in any way, which is obviously not my goal. I just want to let you know that being a woman comes with so many burdens and so much heaviness. And I hope in the future that the conversation around kids can be one that maybe feels a little less heavy. And if any of you guys leave this episode feeling a little bit more seen or understood or heard or safe in this discussion, then I did my job for you guys today. So I hope that this episode was helpful. I'm happy to talk about this for any woman who wants to chat in my DMs. I'm happy to give more detail, insight, talk through any of the processing that I've done, consult with you in any way on just like your processing, your emotions, your whatever. But I hope that this at least starts a conversation that I think needs to be talked about more often. So I love you guys very much, and I will see everyone next week.